when I tell you the security failures that cost Charlie Kirk his life, I think this is going to be very eye-opening for a lot of people. Now, I'm going to cover all of the ones that I know of as of right now. Of course, things are changing very quickly when it comes to this, but there's some concrete stuff we have here, but there's also some missed opportunities. Maybe you knew about, maybe you didn't, that we're going to cover as well. Things that could have only taken just a couple of seconds, but changed the outcome entirely. And unfortunately, I can't change it. Nobody can change it, right? But what I can do is bring as much truth and light to this situation. There's enough theories and conspiracies and all kinds of craziness going on, some of which we may even cover in this video, but we want to dispel that and talk about what's actually there, prove what we can actually see. And some of this stuff is quite disturbing, the things that were missed. This is with all due respect to Charlie's family, his wife, his kids, of course, his friends. Everybody that knew him. I know I was a fan of the work he did, and whether you agreed or disagreed with him, I could imagine anybody else in that chair, somebody that I vehemently disagree with, and I would never want to see that happen to anybody. Now, if you are somebody celebrating something like this, I made a whole video about this yesterday, but you really need to check yourself in the mirror hard, because if there's somebody that actually gave you more of a voice than most outlets, it was Charlie Kirk, because he'd bring you to the front of the line so you could have debate. Super sad situation. And of course, I want to hear your opinion. Whatever it might be, leave that down below. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, let's go ahead and first talk about the weapon that was found, right? A Mauser 30-06 rifle. This is a bolt-action rifle. Mauser has been making rifles since like 1906. It's one of the most accurate and one of the best bolt-action platforms. And a lot of different companies use the Mauser action because it's known for being super robust, reliable, and super accurate as well. Now, there's a lot of things that go into accuracy, but Mausers are known for that. And so what I want to do, because I see a lot of people saying, man, is this like a sharpshooter? Is this some kind of trained shooter? And he certainly could be, but let me just tell you, man, if we're looking at Google Earth, which I pulled up an image here, from where the suspect was supposedly at and where Charlie was sitting, there's a couple things that scream to me, just how did this happen, first of all. But the first thing you'll notice is there's a downward slope. So the shooter's up here in an elevated position. He's not too high up, but he's just elevated enough to get a almost absolute clear shot. If you're picking out any point in this place, when you know where Charlie's going to be seated, this would be one of the places I'd be looking at. And let me just tell you, anybody, including this coward that shot Charlie, can take, 3 or 4 range trips, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, who knows, depending on who you are, and take that rifle, train with it a little bit, and hit a still target at 200 yards. And unfortunately, Charlie was still, right? He was talking. So it's not like it's this like crazy sharpshooter type of thing. In no way was he aiming for the neck. My opinion would be most likely center mass. That's where the odds of you getting the best shot off are going to be. But that's my opinion there. You can train almost anybody to be able to hit that shot with that round, very little drop off at 200 yards. Of course, that's highly dependent upon the zero of the rifle. You have elevation things to consider, but again, maybe 1 or 2 inches, right? It might be 3 to 5 inches either way. But I think what we're seeing here is somebody that trained a little bit, went to maybe one of the local ranges. Maybe he's not from there at all, but regardless, it's something that most people with a little bit of training, I think, would be able to pull off. So that's my very first question. Why aren't the roofs secured? Now, I understand that they're not going to have counter snipers. We can contrast a lot of this with the Trump shooting too, by the way. But, you don't have to have counter snipers. That's not something that they're normally going to do for people that aren't heads of state. Now, considering how many threats Charlie got, and again, I'm not blaming his team or him or anything. I just trying to make sense of it, I guess. But knowing the kind of threats, knowing what happened in Butler last year, to me, I would want to be able to secure the roofs, right? Those vantage points just provide, unfortunately, the perfect vantage point to do something as evil as this. But you don't have to have counter snipers, right? You just have to have sight, vision. You got to be able to see. And unfortunately, Utah Valley University, they have unmanned drone systems, but they don't typically use them for speeches like this. But, it's like one of the most threatened, but also one of the biggest conservative people, right? I mean, created an entire movement, receives threats all the time, and yet nobody thought, let's keep a drone in the air at the very minimum. They could have had maybe some security, watching the ladders. If you look at this place, it seems like a lot easier access than what it is. That's just from me looking at Google Maps, right? I've never been to this university, so I don't really know. There's variables here, right? So I want to, again, make sure I give you good information, but it seems a lot easier than what it should be otherwise. So if you know, hey, there's ladders, there's security threats, all this kind of stuff, why not at least protect the area or give yourself a chance to see something before it happens with drone coverage? I saw somebody that was flying a drone just hours after this thing happened, right? They posted it up on their X. I'm like, how is there a drone right now? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It just seems like there was just kind of and maybe it was the Utah police or security detail for Charlie's team. I don't know, but it just seemed like, hey, it's a pretty safe place. Unfortunately, what we know is that gun-free zones and places that are relatively seen as safe often become targets because there is a false sense of security. Again, that's just the perception. I'm not making any accusations on anybody's security team or anything like that. I don't understand it. That's the biggest thing. The other thing I don't understand is there was no perimeter presence at all. Again, kind of one of the issues that we saw in Butler. There were 6 people from the police department working in conjunction with Charlie's team. I don't know exactly how many people he has, but they're all in close proximity. Now, one of the sheriffs out there, said, we plan on like mass tragedy type of events, not long range distance shooting, but hindsight's 2020, but it just seems like somewhere you would check and then having people on the perimeter, right? This guy was able to get down, run away, get into the neighborhood. Now we don't know where he is. Now there's talks about private jets leaving 20 minutes after the event. And, where the heck is this guy? And they talked about him being able to blend right in, and there was nobody that saw him. Now, if they found the rifle in some nearby woods, that means he had to be carrying that rifle with him once he got down. In a panic, I get, maybe you're not paying attention to everything. It just, to me, that seems like a lapse in the security planning for this event. And now there's some of the other things. There was no magnemometers or, people were saying, yeah, they never checked their bags or anything like that. That seems like a pretty standard thing. That's not necessarily going to stop somebody that's 200 yards or maybe even 300 yards away is what they're saying now. The point is, though, you got people there close to Charlie. You got officers, plainclothes officers in the crowd, yet you just don't check people that are coming in. Again, my question is, why? It's a big time figure that receives threats all the time. You gotta know a lot of those people go to those events to debate him. That's what he wants, right? That's what he was known for. You don't think that any one of them could possibly want to get close enough to him to do harm. That's not what happened here, but it just, again, begs the question, why the very thing that almost cost Trump his life is what happened right here. It's just a little bit different area, a little bit further away, but the same types of failures. To me, this is a guy that planned this all out. Again, you look at the campus from Google Maps, you look at his line of sight, it is almost perfect. He knew everything about this, in my opinion, he knew everything about this before it even took place. And the last thing too is like the person that took the image of him just sitting on the roof, they were like, is that a person right there? It may seem embarrassing in the moment. I don't know if maybe that's what goes through, some people's minds or whatever. Maybe thinking, hey man, they got this whole security thing figured out, especially what's gone on the past few years. Certainly that's not somebody on the roof with a rifle, but that's what it ended up being. So I guess my point is, if you see something, say something. It costs nothing to say something. And here's the thing too, we're not going to just clam up now and just not say anything. I don't know if this guy realizes it, but You know, I saw, by the way, the messages on the bullets and all that kind of stuff. This is obviously somebody that's super crazy, so wrapped up in their ideology that it just breeds hate. And I will never agree with that. And so, with that said, you just created like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions new Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk fans, by the way. You almost radicalize people for the side that you think is evil. You just turned a whole lot of people to that side. So congratulations, you did that. It's part of the reason that Trump got reelected, right? These things always backfire on these people. And the question, if you're out and about at one of these events, you see something, you say something, oh, if it's a mistake, no harm, no foul. If it's not, there's a chance that maybe could have stopped something tragic, right? So it's just one of those things to keep in mind, man. The security failures here are just awful. And again, you know, just my condolences to his family. I can't even imagine what they're feeling right now. And so we definitely feel for them. We pray for them. And it's just an incredibly tragic situation that I think is going to have the complete opposite effect. But in reality, it should have never happened. These security failures just seem like a huge, huge failure in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. I'd love to hear yours. Let me know what you think down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.